The COVID-19 crisis exposed many harsh realities of the healthcare system in India. It wasn't just the fact that healthcare is expensive in the country. Other deeper problems like availability of resources, infrastructure, institutional support to both doctors and patients, accountability in cases of exploitation came to light.
It's very natural that you would be worried about ending up in the healthcare system. The best way to address that fear is to equip yourself with information. Do you know if there are any laws that protect you as a patient?
What are your rights if you get overcharged by a hospital or even denied treatment?
What do you do if medical personnel harass you or discriminate against you?
Let's find out.
Is there a law on patient rights in India? There is no specific or singular law in India addressing rights of patients, but various existing Indian laws grant rights to patients. These laws ensure that people can access medical care and receive dignified treatment.
To make these rights easy to understand for the public, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the National Human Rights Commission have compiled the Charter of Patient Rights. The Charter has not been formally enacted, but the rights mentioned in it come from different existing laws and are already available to the people.
But what does this Charter say?
According to this Charter, as a patient, you have the right to get information about your medical condition, treatment methods, and options.
You have the right to get your medical record and reports, and the right to get emergency medical care from government and private hospitals.
You have the right to only be operated upon after giving your informed consent in writing.
You have the right to confidentiality, privacy, and dignity.
You have the right to get a second opinion from other doctors.
And the right to transparent rates for services, tests, and treatments.
You have the right to not be discriminated against on the grounds of gender, sexuality, caste, religion, race, place of birth, or illness.
You have the right to a safe and clean environment for treatment, and the right to choose alternative treatment options if available.
You have the right to choose sources for obtaining medicines and tests.
And the right to be referred to a doctor free from commercial influence or interest. You have the right to be protected as a clinical trial patient.
You have the right to receive education about the facts relevant to your case and healthy living practices.
You also have the right to be heard and seek redressal.
We spoke to Anjela Taneja of Oxfam India to understand some of the important provisions of this charter better, how implementation of it has worked so far, and what are the best ways for a citizen to access remedies under it.
Patient Rights Charter is a set of rights that have been put together by through an elaborate process, initially anchored by the National Human Rights Commission, but subsequently drafted by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It lists the various rights of patients, as the words suggest, which talk about the various, which are in that sense derived out of existing legal frameworks of this country, and are therefore a reframing, a recompilation of those legal rights. Are they legally enforced or enforceable? Yes and no. They are legally enforceable, yes, because the existing base legislation from which this is derived is enforceable. Therefore, in so doing, this framework provides a new articulation, a new, easier to understand framework. The no part of it is the framework has not been notified by the state government, and it is important for the state government to notify it because health is a state subject, and therefore it would have to be the states who ensure implementation. It's not enforceable because it's ultimately a reframing of existing rights rather than a framework on its own, and accordingly would have been better if it had more teeth, but as I said, it fundamentally the base rights still exist and stand on their own.
The Patient Rights Charter talks about the right to emergency treatment. What does this mean?
It's the right for a sick person to receive care in a hospital when, say, having had an emergency, an accident, or otherwise needing urgent, immediate treatment. So therefore, a person cannot be denied this treatment. It's been an existing ruling from the Supreme Court onwards, that any effort to deny the right to treatment is fundamentally a denial of the right to life as per the constitution. Uh, no, even in the COVID setting, hospitals cannot refuse a treatment on the ground that someone is COVID positive. What they have to do is report suspected or infected cases to the concerned authorities, but they cannot deny treatment because if it's an emergency, the person's right to immediate treatment and right to life still prevails.
What does the right to informed consent mean?
The right to informed consent is the right of a patient to know what the mode of treatment and costs and the details of treatment before agreeing to it. Therefore, the doctor's responsibility is to explain to the patient what the risks, what the costs, what the consequences of treatment, and what the potential long-term side effects of treatment might be before entering into this treatment, and the patient has to agree to this, and based on the adequate information to ensure that therefore he or she is adequately informed before any decisions are taken about his or her life or overall well-being.
Can the doctor hide any details of your treatment from you or from your medical records?
So it is an ethical violation. So therefore, no, the doctor cannot or should not do so. So therefore, whichever procedures exist in terms of ethical violations of doctors or in terms of going to the or other modes, the action can be taken against the doctor.
What does the right to confidentiality mean? If you ask a doctor to not mention your medical information such as diagnosis or treatment plan to your family members, is the doctor legally bound by this request?
So, yes, there is a right to confidentiality if the patient doesn't want information to be divulged to relatives, friends, etc. That right has to be respected. The only exception is the question of minors. Minors need to take consent of their parents, and in such instances it is the responsibility of the doctor to follow due procedure. Alternatively, for adults, the right to confidentiality holds supreme.
Has the government set a standard rate or cutoff for COVID treatment? Will you be denied treatment if you can't afford it?
So, is there a standard rate? Yes, but it has been set up by the various individual states and varies considerably from state to state. Therefore, again, as many things in this country, the answer is yes and no. Therefore, and because say the rates of say a hospital bed in Chhattisgarh is probably a third of that of say Tamil Nadu. So therefore, yes, there are standard rates that have been notified. They have been notified slightly late, but fortunately they have. Can the patient be denied treatment? Like most other things in this country, it depends on which state it is and what the legal framework of that state is. So unfortunately, not all states have made this binding. They should.
Can you challenge a hospital's bills if you are being overcharged?
Yes, they can go to consumer court, and that's where a lot of this maybe comes in, because one would have wished to not needing to go to consumer court for instances like this, but have a more speedy, urgent resolution.
If you're being denied treatment because of your caste, gender, or sexual orientation, what recourses do you have?
So, 2 or 3. On one level, there is what I talked about earlier as well, there is the question of the consumer court. But it is also in several of these instances say caste, a violation of other provisions like say Dalit Atrocities Act, etc., to a substantial degree. It might also, given the fact that the NHRC is the original mover of this document, quasi-judiciary bodies remain avenues for engagement, and also administrative redress and other provisions within the hospital, given the fact that they're obviously violating the provisions of the existing base legislation and are plain and simple behaving in an unethical manner.
To know more about the law on patient rights in India, please visit nyaya.org.
You can also visit Oxfam India's website to know more about the movement advocating for rights of patients, especially in the time of this ongoing pandemic. Thank you for watching this video and join us again for India's Laws Explained.